I didn't expect to lose everything that day. And if I'm being honest, I didn't even think I was making a big decision. It just felt like the right thing to do at the time. I used to believe life was simple. Show up, work hard, keep your head down, and eventually things fall into place. That belief had worked for me for years. I had a stable job at a mid-sized logistics company. Nothing glamorous. I handled scheduling, shipments, and the constant stream of small problems no one else wanted to deal with. It was predictable, which I liked. My days had a rhythm. Coffee at 8:15, emails by 8:30, meetings I half paid attention to, and the quiet satisfaction of fixing things before they turn into bigger problems. I remember thinking I had it figured out. Not success in the flashy sense, but stability. And to me, that felt like enough. Most people at work kept to themselves. Conversations stayed surface level. Deadlines, weekend plans, complaints about traffic. No one really got involved in anyone else's life, except her. Her name was Alina. She joined our team quietly, almost unnoticed at first. No big introduction, no long onboarding speeches, just another new hire trying to learn the system. But I started noticing small things about her. She asked more questions than most people. Not annoying questions, thoughtful ones, the kind that made you pause before answering. At first, I kept my distance. That was my rule. Work was work. But over time, we ended up talking more, mostly because she sat across from me and our tasks overlapped. She struggled with some of the processes, and I'd help when I could. Nothing unusual. At least, that's what I told myself. But then, I started noticing something else. She stayed late almost every day. Not in the way people do when they're trying to impress the boss. It was quieter than that. Almost like she didn't want to leave. Even when her work was done, she'd sit there, staring at her screen or reorganizing things that didn't need to be reorganizing. I remember thinking it was strange, but I didn't ask. Not my business. That was my mindset back then. Stay in your lane. One evening, I was packing up to leave when I saw her still there. Everyone else had already gone. The office felt different, too quiet, like it was holding its breath. I hesitated. Then I said, "You heading out soon?" She looked up, like I'd pulled her out of somewhere far away. For a second, she didn't answer. Then she just said, "Yeah, in a bit." Something about the way she said it didn't sit right. I almost left. Honestly, I should have, according to the version of me I was back then. But instead, I sat back down. "I can help if you're stuck on something," I said. She shook her head. "It's not work." That was the moment things shifted, even though I didn't realize it yet. There was a pause, the kind that feels longer than it is. Then she said, very quietly, "I just don't have anywhere to go right now." I didn't respond right away. Not because I didn't care, but because I didn't know what caring was supposed to look like in that moment. My mind went straight to logic, questions, solutions, but none of them felt appropriate. So I just said, "What do you mean?" She hesitated, like she was deciding how much to reveal. Then she told me, in pieces. She'd been staying with a friend. That arrangement ended suddenly. She didn't have family nearby, no savings to fall back on. And for the past few nights, she'd been sleeping in her car. I remember feeling this strange discomfort. Not shock, not even sadness, just the quiet unease. Because suddenly, the world didn't feel as structured as I thought it was. People weren't just doing fine or not doing fine. There were these in-between spaces, hidden struggles, things you wouldn't notice unless you looked a little closer. And I realized I had never really looked. That night, I offered her my couch. It wasn't a heroic moment. It didn't feel like one. It felt inconvenient. I lived alone. I liked my space, my routine. But at the same time, saying no didn't sit right either. So I said yes. I told myself it was temporary, just a few days until she figured things out. That was the decision. The small, quiet decision that changed everything. At first, it was awkward. We barely talked outside of work before, and now we're sharing the same space.
I remember overthinking everything. What to say, what not to say, how to make it feel normal when it clearly wasn't. But something interesting happened. The more time we spent in the same space, the more human everything felt. Not in a dramatic way, just small things. She'd make coffee before I woke up. I'd leave the TV on at night so it didn't feel too quiet. We started talking, not about work, but about life, the kind of conversations you don't plan. I started noticing how carefully she carried herself, like she was always trying not to be a burden. And that thought stayed with me. A few days turned into 2 weeks. She was actively looking for a place, picking up extra shifts, doing everything she could to get back on her feet. But life doesn't always move on your timeline. And then something else happened. My manager called me into his office. I remember sitting there, already sensing where it was going. He didn't look angry, just distant. He said there had been complaints, that I was distracted, that my performance had slipped. I wanted to argue, but I knew, deep down, there was some truth to it. My focus had shifted. My priorities weren't as clean and organized as before. And then he said it. They were letting me go. Just like that. No warning, no second chance. I remember walking out of that office feeling blank. Not angry, not even scared yet. Just disconnected. It didn't feel real. When I got home, I told Elena. She went quiet. And for the first time since I met her, she looked genuinely shaken. "This is my fault," she said. I immediately said no, but a part of me wondered. Not because I blamed her, but because I started questioning my own decision. Had I crossed the line? Had I let something personal interfere with something important? That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept going in circles. I always believed that doing the right thing would lead to the right outcome. But now, that belief felt unstable, because the outcome didn't look right at all. Over the next few weeks, everything slowed down. No job, no routine, no structure. It was uncomfortable, but it also forced me to notice things I usually ignored, like how much of my identity was tied to my job, how much of my confidence came from feeling in control, and how quickly that control disappeared. Elena eventually found a small place. She moved out quietly, almost apologetically. Before she left, she said something I didn't fully understand at the time. "You didn't just help me," she said. "You reminded me I'm not invisible." I nodded, but I didn't know what to do with that. Life moved on, slowly. I started applying for new jobs. Some interviews, a lot of rejections, but something had shifted. I wasn't approaching things the same way anymore. I was more aware of people, of situations, of the things beneath the surface. A few months later, I got a call, not from a company I applied to, from Elena. She told me she'd been working with a small startup, a growing one, and they were looking for someone with my skill set. I almost brushed it off, but something in her voice made me listen. I went to the interview. It felt different from the moment I walked in, less rigid, more human. They didn't just ask about my experience, they asked how I handled people, situations, pressure. At one point, the interviewer said, "Elena told us about you." That caught me off guard. Not in a bad way, just unexpected. A week later, they offered me the job. Better pay, better environment, more growth than I ever had before. But that wasn't the part that stayed with me. What stayed with me was the realization. Losing my job hadn't been a punishment. It had been a shift, a forced one, because the version of me before that moment, structured, controlled, detached, would never have ended up here, would never have met these people, would never have seen what I was missing.
I used to think life rewards you for doing things right. Now I think it's a little different. Sometimes life quietly changes your direction the moment you choose to care. And it doesn't always feel like a reward at first. Sometimes it feels like loss, like instability, like you made the wrong decision. But maybe you just stepped out of the version of life that was too small for you, I still think about that night in the office sometimes, how close I was to just walking away. And I wonder, how many people do we pass by every day, not because we don't care, but because we've trained ourselves not to notice?